As the final bell echoed through the corridors of Westbridge High, the air shifted. Students poured into the halls, not with the usual Friday cheer, but with a buzz of something more primal anticipation. Word had spread. A fight was going down. Not just any fight, but one that had marinated in whispers, sideways glances, and tense silences for weeks. At the heart of it stood Ethan Tran, the quiet new kid, and Bryce Callahan, the school's untouchable alpha. Ethan walked steadily, each step deliberate, toward the patch of grass behind the gymnasium. His breath came slow and measured, just like Master Wu had taught him. Calm mind, still body, sharp strike. He didn't carry fear. He carried choice. The choice not to hide anymore. The sky overhead roiled with darkening clouds as though the weather, too, felt the tension building. By the time Ethan reached the back lot, a ring of students had already formed, their voices hushed with a reverence reserved for the moments right before history rewrites itself. Bryce was already there, flanked by his two enforcers, Mason and Trey, looking smug, bored, certain. He stepped forward, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "You actually showed. I figured you'd run home to mommy." Ethan didn't answer. He simply dropped his backpack, tightened the drawstrings of his hoodie, and stepped inside the circle. "Oh, I get it," Bryce laughed. "You think because you did a few karate classes at the Y, you can square up? Cute." Someone in the crowd chuckled nervously. But Ethan's gaze never wavered. He saw it now, the twitch in Bryce's left shoulder, the over-reliance on right-handed punches, the slight forward lean that signaled brute force with no balance. Years of training had taught him to read these things instantly. Bryce was strong, yes, but he was predictable. Bryce lunged. The world slowed. To those watching, it happened too fast to understand. Bryce's punch cut through the air, wide, wild, all bark. But Ethan slipped to the side, pivoted on the balls of his feet, and in one fluid motion, locked Bryce's arm and redirected his momentum. Bryce stumbled, spun, and fell hard onto the wet grass. A collective gasp swept the crowd. Trey cursed and rushed forward. This time Ethan didn't wait. His palm struck clean into Trey's chest, just under the sternum, a soft spot. Trey doubled over, airless. He dropped like a stone. Mason hesitated. Just a flicker, but it was enough. Ethan turned, eyes locked. "Don't," he said quietly. Mason's hands went up. He stepped back. Bryce pushed himself up from the ground, mud streaking his expensive jeans, his ego bleeding out through the scratches on his hands. "You think this makes you a man?" He spat, rage and humiliation warping his features. "You'll regret this. You don't get to embarrass me. You did that to yourself," Ethan replied, voice like steel wrapped in silk. Bryce charged again, a bull in a blind fury. Ethan didn't move until the last second. Then, with grace honed by years of discipline, he spun under the lunge, grabbed Bryce's wrist, and used his own momentum to flip him onto his back. This time, Ethan pinned him, one knee on his chest, his forearm across Bryce's neck, not pressing hard enough to choke, just enough to control. The crowd was silent. Even the air felt frozen. Ethan leaned in close, his voice barely audible but sharp as a blade. "You need to understand something. I didn't fight back because I was afraid of you. I didn't fight because I was afraid of what I could do if I stopped holding back." Bryce's eyes widened. There was no bravado left now, only the raw realization that he had grossly misjudged the boy he'd treated like prey. "I'm not your punching bag. I'm not your target. And starting today, I'm not your victim," Ethan said, standing up and stepping back. Bryce didn't get up. Not right away. Ethan turned to the circle of students, eyes meeting theirs, the band kids, the shy ones, the outcasts, the quiet observers who had lived their own battles in silence. "This ends now. For all of us." Then, he picked up his backpack, dusted off his sleeves, and walked away, not as the quiet kid anymore, but as a storm that had passed, leaving clarity and calm in its wake. Behind him, the crowd parted, reverent. Somewhere in the distance, a teacher's whistle blew. But no one moved. No one spoke. Because everyone knew. Nothing at Westbridge High would ever be the same again. The silence after the fight stretched like a held breath. No one moved. No one cheered. It wasn't the kind of victory people screamed for. It was something deeper, more haunting. The kind of moment that left students shifting uncomfortably, glancing at each other as if they'd all just seen something they couldn't explain. Ethan slung his backpack over his shoulder and walked back toward the main building. Behind him, Bryce Callahan remained on the ground, blinking up at the darkening sky, his world upended. As Ethan rounded the gym's corner, Zoe and Mia caught up to him. "Holy crap," Mia whispered, eyes wide. "You just did that." Ethan didn't respond. He was still in the zone, breath even, heart steady. Everything his mentor taught him, about control, about balance, about the purpose of power, rushed back in like a tide. He hadn't humiliated Bryce. He had disarmed him without brutality. He had claimed dignity, not dominance. Zoe fell into step beside him. "Are you okay?" Ethan nodded. "Yeah, just tired." Mia was still behind them, half laughing, half shaking her head. "Tired? You just threw the captain of the football team like he was a sack of laundry." "He left me no choice," Ethan said softly. Zoe studied his face. "You really didn't want to hurt him, did you?" "No," Ethan said, "but I wanted him to stop." They walked in silence until they reached the school's front steps. Most of the crowd behind the gym had scattered now. The word would spread fast. Phones had captured it. It would be on every group chat by nightfall. As Ethan stood at the front of the school, a black sedan rolled up to the curb. Master Wu stepped out, calm as ever, dressed in a simple button-up shirt and black slacks, like someone who'd just come from a quiet lunch, not someone about to hear his student might have just broken his promise. "Sensei," Ethan said, head bowing instinctively. Master Wu looked him over, uninjured, calm, alert. His eyes narrowed slightly. "Principal called me," he said. "They were concerned about a fight." "It didn't escalate," Ethan answered. "I didn't hurt anyone." Wu studied him for a long beat, then nodded. "Get in." Ethan turned to Zoe and Mia. "Thanks for today." Zoe touched his arm. "You're not alone anymore." He gave her a small, grateful smile, then got in the car. The drive was quiet. Wu didn't speak until they reached a red light. "What triggered it?" Ethan exhaled. "He cornered me behind the gym. It was either stand my ground or give him everything I had, money, homework, my name." "Did you strike first?" "No." "Did you finish it with restraint?" "Yes, sensei." Wu's jaw relaxed. "Then I have no disappointment. Only caution." Ethan looked over. "What do you mean?" "You've now shown them who you are," Wu said. "They'll react. Some with fear, some with curiosity, others with challenge. Be ready. Your strength is no longer your secret." Ethan nodded slowly. "I understand." When they arrived at Ethan's house, his parents were already waiting on the porch. His mother looked worried. His father was unreadable. Inside, as Ethan recounted the events, he watched their faces carefully. He told them the truth, how long it had gone on, how many times he'd walked away, how he'd held himself back again and again, and how today, something changed. He expected disappointment. Instead, his father let out a long breath. "You didn't shame us. You honored the discipline." His mother touched his cheek. "Just promise us you'll continue to lead with your mind, not your fists." "I promise." That night, Ethan sat on his bed, staring at the ceiling. He felt different. Not just because the school saw him now, but because he had seen himself. He wasn't hiding anymore. Not his past. Not his training. Not his boundaries. He was done playing small. The next morning, walking into Westbridge felt like stepping into a different school. The hallway chatter dimmed as he passed. People moved aside without him asking. Some nodded respectfully. Others watched him like a hawk. At his locker, someone had taped a post-it. "Respect." He peeled it off slowly, slid it into his notebook. In first period, Zoe and Mia waved him over. They'd saved him a seat. "You've gone viral, you know," Mia said, holding up her phone. "Everyone's seen it. Even Coach Fuller." "Great," Ethan muttered. "No, really," Zoe chimed in. "He actually told Bryce to take a few days off. Rumor is, Coach isn't happy about him dragging the team name into a fight." Ethan frowned. "I don't want anyone in trouble." "You didn't start this," Zoe said firmly. "You ended it." As the days passed, something shifted at school. Ethan wasn't exactly popular. He wasn't looking for that, but the bullying stopped. Not just for him, but for others too. It was as if his defiance had snapped some invisible chain. Bryce and his gang kept their distance. In fact, Bryce didn't return for a full week. When he did, he moved through school with an unfamiliar silence. The respect was real, but it came with pressure. More students came up to Ethan now, some asking about martial arts, some asking for advice. One even asked if he'd teach them self-defense. He didn't know how to answer that yet. But through it all, Ethan kept training. Harder than ever. The regional MMA tournament was approaching. It meant more now. It wasn't just about medals or proving something in the ring. It was about honoring the peace he had fought for, the self he had reclaimed. 3 weeks later, the gym where the regional championships were being held buzzed with energy. The smell of sweat and chalk filled the air. Fighters stretched, shadowboxed, shook out nerves. Ethan stood barefoot on the mat, wearing his Navy GI belt tight, eyes closed in meditation. Next match, middleweight under 18 bracket. Ethan Tran, Westbridge Dojo, versus James Ortiz, Ventura Combat Club. Ethan stepped forward, bowing once to the judges, once to his opponent. James was taller, heavier, a wrestler, judging by his stance. The bell rang. They clashed. The match was brutal. Every second was a storm of motion, takedowns, sweeps, countergrapples. James was relentless, but Ethan was patient, calm. He let James come to him, let his aggression wear him down. Then, in a sudden flurry of motion, Ethan executed a textbook judo sweep, mounted, and locked in a triangle choke. Tap. The crowd erupted. Ethan released instantly, rolling to his knees, breathing hard, sweat dripping from his brow. He was in the finals. An hour later, it was time. His final opponent was Dylan Mercer, undefeated. Fast, ruthless. Ethan had watched his earlier matches. Dylan fought like a hammer. No hesitation. No wasted motion. The bell rang again. This time, Ethan didn't wait. He struck first, a lightning-quick front kick, followed by a jab that grazed Dylan's chin. Dylan countered, and they fell into a spiral of movement, fists, knees, blocks, breath. Minutes passed. Neither could land the finishing move. Until Ethan saw it. Dylan's footwork had a pattern: left, feint, low kick. It was predictable. He baited it. And when it came, Ethan pivoted, caught Dylan's leg mid-kick, spun him into a rear clinch, and swept him flat onto the mat. He locked in the hold. Tap. The arena roared. The ref raised Ethan's hand. First place. Gold medal. His teammates mobbed him. Master Wu bowed from the sidelines, proud but composed. In the crowd, Ethan spotted familiar faces, his parents, cheering, Zoe clapping wildly, Mia recording with tears in her eyes. And at the very back, standing alone in his Letterman jacket, Bryce Callahan. They locked eyes, and Bryce nodded once. Ethan nodded back. No hate, no grudge, just something like respect. That Monday, back at school, everything felt different. Because he was different. He no longer tried to disappear. He didn't shrink himself. He walked with his full height, his full story. Not as the quiet kid. Not as the fighter. Just as Ethan Tran. A boy who knew exactly who he was. And who'd never forget it again.